The red sun of Kepler 442b was setting behind the Crystal Mountains when Captain Taman heard the alarm bells ring across New Bison Colony. He grabbed his rifle and ran toward the mining tunnels where his men were already gathering. The scanner. Readings showed something big moving deep inside the caves. "What do we have down there?" Taman asked his sergeant, a tough woman named Mi-young who had been fighting aliens for 10 years. "Something large, sir. About 3 meters tall. It crashed through the south tunnel entrance about an hour ago. The miners got out safely, but we lost contact with the patrol team that went to check." Taman nodded grimly. He knew what this meant. The draconic hegemony had found their little colony again. These reptilian warriors had been attacking human settlements for years, killing families and destroying everything they built. They were smart, strong, and showed no mercy to anyone. "Get me 12 good soldiers," Taman ordered. "Full combat. Gear, we go in fast and hard." The captain led his team into the crystal caves beneath New Bison. The tunnels were narrow and filled with glowing blue crystals that made everything look ghostly. Their boots echoed on the hard stone floor as they moved deeper underground. Each man knew they might not come back alive. Tae-min had been a soldier for 15 years. He had fought the Draconics on 4 different worlds. He knew how dangerous they were. A single Draconic warrior could kill 5 human soldiers before going down. Their scales were like armor, their claws could cut through metal, and their weapons could melt a man in seconds. The team found the missing patrol in Tunnel 7. All 3 soldiers were dead, their bodies thrown against the crystal walls like broken dolls. The Draconic had killed them quickly and efficiently. There were scorch marks on the walls from energy weapons. "Spread out," Taman whispered to his men. "Stay in pairs. Watch each other's backs. Remember, these things are fast." They moved deeper into the tunnels, following the trail of destruction. Broken crystals crunched under their feet. The air smelled like burned metal and something else, something alien and dangerous. Then they heard it. A low growling sound echoing from the main tunnel ahead. It was the sound of a wounded animal, but this animal could think and plan and kill. Tae-min signaled his men to take positions. They crept forward until they could see into the large central cavern where the miners usually worked. There, surrounded by broken equipment and scattered tools, stood the most terrifying thing most of them had ever seen. The Draconic warrior was huge, nearly 3 meters tall and covered in black scales that reflected the crystal light like mirrors. Its yellow eyes glowed in the darkness, and when it turned its head, they could see rows of sharp teeth. Blood dripped from its left arm, where a mining laser had burned through its armor, but what made it truly frightening was not its size or weapons, it was the intelligence in its eyes. This was not just a monster. This was a thinking, planning enemy who had probably killed hundreds of humans. The alien held an energy rifle in its good arm, but Taman could see the weapon's power cell was nearly empty. The creature was trapped. It had been separated from its raiding party and was now cornered like a dangerous beast. "Surround it," Taman ordered quietly through his radio. "Keep your distance. Wait for my signal." His men moved like shadows around the cavern edges. The Draconic warrior noticed them and raised its weapon, but it did not fire. It was saving its last shots for when they really mattered. For long minutes, soldiers and aliens stared at each other across the crystal cavern. Everyone knew this would end in violence. The only question was how many humans would die before the creature fell. Then something unexpected happened. The Draconic warrior lowered its weapon slightly and spoke in broken human language. "You fight well, humans. I am Vorthok of the Third Claw. I greet you as warriors." Taman was shocked. In all his years fighting these creatures, he had never heard one speak their language. Most humans thought the Draconics were just smart animals, but this one was trying to communicate. "Surrender your weapon," Taman called out. "You are wounded and outnumbered. We can end this without more death." Vorthok's yellow eyes fixed on the captain. "My kind do not surrender? We die with honor or live with victory? There is no middle path. Then you will die here," Taman replied sadly. He had seen too much killing. Too many good soldiers had died fighting these aliens. But something about this creature's dignity made him hesitate. The standoff continued for several more minutes. Then Vorthak did something that surprised everyone. He carefully placed his energy rifle on the ground and stepped back from it. His hands remained visible, but his posture showed he was ready to fight with claws and teeth if necessary. "I am alone," Vorthak said slowly. "My clan brothers are gone. I have no ship, no escape, but I will not beg for mercy from humans." Taemin made a decision that would change everything. Instead of ordering his men to shoot, he stepped forward with his hands raised but still holding his rifle. "You fought with honor," he told the alien. "Surrender now, and you will be treated with respect. I give you my word as a soldier." For a moment that felt like forever, the two warriors looked at each other across the crystal cavern. Then Vorthak slowly knelt and placed his clawed hands behind his head. "I am your prisoner, human captain. Do with me what you will." 20 minutes later, the alien warrior was bound with heavy chains and being escorted back to New Bizan colony. Taemin walked beside the huge creature, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his military career. Behind them, the crystal caves echoed with the sound of marching feet, carrying news that would soon shake the entire colony to its core. The news spread through New Bizan colony like wildfire. A live draconic warrior had been captured and was being brought to the settlement. People dropped their work and ran to see this impossible thing with their own eyes. When Captain Taemin arrived with his prisoner, nearly the entire colony had gathered in the central square. Men, women, and children pressed forward to stare at the massive alien warrior bound in heavy chains. Many had never seen a draconic up close before. Vorthak walked with his head held high, showing no fear or shame despite being a prisoner. His black scales gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, and his yellow eyes scanned the hostile crowd without expression. To the colonists, he looked like a demon from their worst nightmares. "Kill it now," shouted Dongwu, pushing through the crowd. He was a big man who worked in the crystal mines, and his face was twisted with hatred. "My wife and children died when these monsters attacked the outer farms. Why is this thing still breathing?" Other voices joined his. "Burn it! Make it suffer like our families suffered. Show it the same mercy they showed us." Administrative leader Haijin stepped forward to restore order. She was a calm woman in her 50s who had led the colony for 8 years through many crises. Behind her came Security Chief Bongsu, a former military man who kept his hand on his sidearm. "Everyone step back," Haijin commanded. "This prisoner will be dealt with according to colonial law, not by mob violence." "What law?" demanded Dongwu. "These creatures are not human. They have no rights. They killed my family and burned my home. I demand justice." "You want revenge, not justice?" Haijin replied firmly. "There is a difference. This prisoner may have valuable information that could save all our lives." The crowd muttered angrily, but they moved back as security officers formed a protective circle around Vorthak. The alien warrior remained silent, watching everything with those unsettling yellow eyes. Young Yuri stood near the back of the crowd with her parents, who ran the colony's medical center. She was 16 years old and had always been quiet and shy, but she found herself staring at the captured alien with fascination rather than fear. There was something in its bearing that reminded her of the old soldiers who sometimes visited their clinic, men who had seen too much war but still held on to their dignity. "We will hold a tribunal tomorrow morning," Haijin announced. "All colonists may speak, and we will decide this creature's fate democratically. Until then, it will be secured in the storage facility." "A trial?" Bongsu looked surprised. "Administrator, with respect, this is a waste of time. The thing is obviously guilty of war crimes against humanity. We should execute it publicly and be done with it." "Perhaps," Haijin said carefully. "But we are not barbarians. We will follow proper procedures." As the crowd began to disperse, old Jiahun approached the administrator. He had been a soldier in his youth and still walked with a limp from an old battle wound. "Haijin, I understand your reasoning, but keeping this creature alive is dangerous. Its people will come looking for it." "Maybe," she replied. "Or maybe they have already written it off as dead." Either way, we need to learn what it knows about draconic tactics and technology. One prisoner could give us advantages that save hundreds of human lives. That evening, the colony was buzzing with debate. In the communal dining hall, groups of colonists argued late into the night about what should be done with their unexpected prisoner. Wu Jin, a young engineer fresh from Earth, argued for study rather than execution. Think about what we could learn from it. These aliens have technology we barely understand. If we could get it to cooperate, imagine what we might discover. Cooperate? Dongwu slammed his fist on the table. You naive fool. These monsters do not cooperate. They kill and destroy and move on. The only good draconic is a dead one. Yuri re-listened to the arguments from across the room where she sat with her parents. Her mother, Yunsu, was a doctor who had treated many victims of draconic attacks. Her father, Junho, was a practical man who usually stayed out of political discussions. What do you think, father? Yuri asked quietly. Jun-Ho considered his words carefully. I think the creature surrendered when it could have fought to the death. That suggests it is not quite what we expected. But I also think keeping it alive is very dangerous for all of us. It has intelligent eyes, Yuri said softly. I saw them when it looked at the crowd. Not animal eyes, thinking eyes. Her mother touched her shoulder gently. Intelligence does not equal goodness, daughter. Some of the worst monsters in history were very intelligent. Meanwhile, in the storage facility on the colony's edge, Vorthek sat in darkness surrounded by armed guards. The building had been hastily converted into a prison cell, with the alien warrior chained to the center support beam. Guards watched him through the windows, never letting their weapons waver. The alien had not spoken since his capture. He sat perfectly still like a statue carved from black stone. His breathing was so quiet the guards sometimes wondered if he had died, until those yellow eyes would shift to look at them through the glass. The next morning, the tribunal convened in the colony's meeting hall. Nearly every adult colonist attended, packing the room until people stood along the walls. Haijin sat at a table in front with Bongsu and two other colony council members. Vorthak was brought in still wearing chains, flanked by 6 armed guards. When he entered the room, conversations stopped and the air grew tense. Many people had never been this close to a living draconic warrior before. This tribunal will determine the fate of the prisoner, Haijin announced. All colonists may speak, but we will maintain order. Anyone who disrupts these proceedings will be removed. Dongwu was the first to stand. I call for immediate execution. This creature's people have murdered our families and destroyed our homes. Keeping it alive is an insult to every human who has died fighting its kind. Several people shouted agreement, but then Wu Jin stood up. I disagree. This prisoner could provide intelligence that saves human lives. We should study it, learn from it, use it to understand our enemies better. The debate continued for hours. Some colonists wanted revenge for past attacks. Others argued for practical advantage through interrogation. A few even suggested trying to use the prisoner as a bargaining chip with other draconic forces. Through it all, Vorthek remained silent and motionless. He showed no reaction to the heated words, the angry accusations, or the various death threats. His dignity in the face of such hostility was almost unsettling. Finally, Haijin called for quiet. We will postpone the final decision until tomorrow. The prisoner will remain secured while we consider all options. As the meeting broke up, Yuri noticed something that others had missed. When the crowd grew loudest and most threatening, the alien's eyes had briefly closed, as if he were tired or sad rather than afraid. It was a very human gesture from a very alien creature. That night, long-range scanners detected something that changed everything. A draconic fleet was approaching the system, still days away but moving steadily toward New Bizan colony. The debate about one prisoner suddenly became much less important than the question of survival. The draconic fleet arrived 3 days later like a dark storm across the stars. 5 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace and took positions around New Bizan colony's planet. Their weapons could destroy the entire settlement in minutes, but instead they began a slow, Methodical bombardment of the defensive systems. Administrator Hyjin stood in the colony's command center, watching the tactical displays with growing dread. The enemy ships were taking their time, testing the colony's shields and defenses like a predator studying its prey. "They are not trying to destroy us quickly," observed Captain Taemin. "They want something here. Maybe they know about our prisoner." "Or they are just being thorough," replied Security Chief Bong-Su grimly. "Draconic military doctrine calls for complete destruction of human settlements. They will pound our defenses until we are helpless, then land troops to finish the job." The first serious attack came at dawn. Beams of energy lanced down from orbit, striking the colony's shield generators with terrible force. The protective barrier held, but everyone could see it flickering under the assault. Each hit drained power from their limited fusion reactors. Yuri was helping her parents prepare the medical center for casualties when the bombardment began. The building shook with each impact, and dust fell from the ceiling as the shield absorbed. Blow after blow. "How long can the defenses hold?" she asked her father while they moved medical supplies to the reinforced basement. Jun-Ho did not answer immediately. He had been monitoring the tactical reports all morning. "Maybe 2 days if? We are lucky, less if they increase the bombardment." That afternoon, a particularly powerful blast struck near the storage facility where Vorthek was imprisoned. The building's roof partially collapsed, trapping several guards under heavy concrete beams. Emergency teams rushed to dig them out. But the rescue work was dangerous and slow. Yuri had been delivering medical supplies to the facility when the attack hit. She found herself in the lower-level storage rooms when the ceiling came down, blocking the main exit. Emergency lights flickered on, showing a maze of fallen debris and twisted metal. She was not alone. Through the dust and darkness, she could see the massive form of Vorthek still chained to the center support beam. The alien warrior had been knocked down by the blast but appeared uninjured. His yellow eyes found hers across the rubble-filled room. For a moment, neither moved. Yuri had never been this close to the alien prisoner without guards nearby. She knew he was strong enough to break those chains if he really tried. Her heart pounded as she realized how helpless she was, but instead of attacking, Vorthek slowly pushed himself back to a sitting position. He looked at the debris blocking the exit, then at the frightened human girl, then back at the rubble. Without saying anything, he began to work. The chains that bound him had been damaged in the collapse. With careful movements, the alien warrior managed to slip one arm free, then the other. He could have escaped right then, but instead he moved toward the blocked exit and began lifting heavy concrete chunks with his powerful claws. Yuri watched in amazement as the massive creature worked to clear the debris. Each piece of concrete was too heavy for her to move, but Vorthek handled them like they were small rocks. His black scales were soon covered with dust and scratches, but he did not stop working. "Why?" she whispered. Vorthek paused in his work. "To look at her." "You are young," he said in his careful, accented human speech. "Young ones should not die in dark places because of wars they did not start." It took him 6 hours to clear enough debris for them to escape. By then, rescue teams were calling from above, having finally reached the collapsed building. When they broke through the last barrier, they found Yuri unconscious from exhaustion and Vorthek. Carefully replacing his chains, the alien warrior had carried the unconscious girl up through the rubble and placed her where the rescuers could easily find her. Then he had returned to his position and waited quietly for them to discover him. Pilot Jae-sung led the rescue team that found them. He was a practical man who had been fighting aliens for years, but what he saw in that ruined building challenged everything he thought he knew about draconic behavior. "Why did you not escape?" he asked Vorthek as security officers secured the alien with new chains. "You could have been gone hours ago." The alien warrior looked at the unconscious girl being carried away on a stretcher. "Where would I go? My people come to destroy this place." "Your people would hunt me." "Better to remain and face whatever comes with honor." "But you saved her life." "She is not my enemy." "She is just a child caught in a war between peoples who have forgotten how to see each other as more than monsters." News. of what happened spread quickly through the colony despite attempts to keep it quiet. Some colonists refused to believe that the alien prisoner had saved Yuri's life. Others wondered if it was some kind of trick or trap. Dong-Wu was among the skeptics. The creature is playing games with us. It knows we will be soft if we think it saved a child. Do not be fooled by alien cunning. But Jae-sung and the other? Rescuers had seen the evidence with their own eyes. The alien could have escaped easily but chose to save a human life instead. It was not the behavior they expected from a mindless monster. The bombardment from orbit continued throughout the night. The colony's shields flickered more frequently now, and power was being rationed to extend their defensive capability. Everyone knew they were living on borrowed time. Engineer So Young made an unsettling discovery while examining Vorthak's damaged armor and equipment. The alien's technology was more advanced than anything humans had seen before. His personal shield generator alone could boost their defensive system significantly, but only if they could understand how it worked. We could interrogate the prisoner, suggested Bong-Su during an emergency council meeting. Force it to explain how their technology functions. The information might save the colony. Torture, you mean? Haijin said quietly. Enhanced interrogation. Whatever we need to call it, we are facing extinction. Normal rules do not apply. Captain Taemin shifted uncomfortably. The creature surrendered under terms of honorable treatment. If we break that promise, we become no better than the enemies. We fight. The debate might have continued, but it was interrupted by urgent reports from the perimeter scouts. Draconic ground forces were landing outside the colony's shield perimeter. The siege was about to become a direct assault. In her hospital bed, Yuri woke up to the sound of weapons fire in the distance. Her parents were beside her, worried but relieved she was safe. But all she could think about was the massive alien warrior who had worked for hours to save her life, then quietly accepted his chains again rather than abandon her to die alone in the darkness outside. The lights of orbital bombardment continued to flash against the weakening shields, while ground forces moved through the crystal forest toward New Bizon colony. The war had come home, and everyone knew their time was running short, but something had changed. One act of unexpected mercy in a collapsed building had planted a seed of doubt in the minds of some colonists. If their prisoner could show compassion to a human child, what did that say about everything they thought they knew about their enemies? The question would soon become more important than anyone realized. Yuri spent 2 days recovering in the medical center while the battle for New Bizon colony raged around them. The draconic ground forces had surrounded the settlement, probing the weakening shields for weak spots. Every few hours, energy blasts would rock the buildings as the orbital bombardment continued. Her parents tried to keep her quiet and resting, but Yuri could not stop thinking about what had happened in the collapsed storage facility. The memory of Vorthak working for hours to free them both haunted her thoughts. She had seen something in the alien warrior's eyes that she could not explain, something that did not match the stories she had heard about draconic monsters. On the third day, she was finally strong enough to leave her bed. Against her parents' wishes, she made her way to the colony's central area where Vorthak had been moved to a new prison. The old storage facility was too damaged to use, so the alien was now held in a transparent aluminum cell in the middle of the main square. What Yuri saw there made her sick to her stomach. A crowd of angry colonists had gathered around the prison cell, and they were throwing things at the alien warrior inside. Rocks, pieces of metal, garbage, anything they could find. The transparent walls protected Vorthak from serious injury, but the constant barrage of objects and insults continued. Hour after hour. "Monster!" shouted Chang-ho, a bitter miner who had lost his brother in a draconic raid years ago. "How does it feel to be helpless? How does it feel to be trapped while your enemies torment you?" Others joined in the abuse. "Your people killed. My children, you deserve to suffer. Die slowly, alien scum." Through it all, Vorthak sat motionless in the center of his cell. The objects thrown at him bounced off the walls harmlessly, but he made no effort to avoid them or even acknowledge the hostile crowd. He simply sat with the same dignified posture Yuri remembered from the tribunal. accepting whatever punishment the humans chose to inflict. "Stop it!" Yuri shouted, pushing through the crowd toward the prison cell. "Leave him alone!" The colonists turned to stare at the young girl in surprise. Many knew she had been trapped with the alien prisoner during the building collapse, but few realized she had witnessed what really happened. "Go home, child," Chang-Ho said dismissively. "This does not concern you. We are giving this creature what it deserves." "You do not understand," Yuri said, her voice shaking with emotion. "He saved my life. When the building collapsed, he could have escaped, but instead he worked for hours to dig us out. He carried me to safety." "Lies," spat Ming-Su, a security guard who had lost friends in alien attacks. "The creature is a killer. They all are. Do not let it fool you with false kindness." "I was there," Yuri insisted. "I saw what he did. He freed himself from his chains, but instead of running away, he stayed to help me. He could have left me to die in the dark, but he chose to save a human child instead." Some of the colonists looked uncertain, but others refused to believe her story. Hei, one, an older woman whose family had been killed in the first draconic attacks on the planet, shook her head angrily. "The girl is traumatized. She does not know what she is saying. These aliens are incapable of mercy or compassion. They are monsters wearing the shape of intelligent beings." The argument might have continued, but it was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Taemin and several security officers. The captain had been making regular checks on the prisoner and was disturbed by what he found. "Disperse this crowd immediately," he ordered. "We will not torture prisoners, no matter what crimes their people have committed." "This is not torture," protested Dongwu. "We are just expressing our feelings about the creature that represents all our enemies. It is therapeutic." "It is mob violence, and it ends now," Taemin replied firmly. "Return to your homes and jobs. We have a war to fight." As the crowd reluctantly dispersed, Uri approached the prison cell. Vorthek's yellow eyes met hers through the transparent wall, and she saw something there that made her heart ache. Not anger or hatred, but a deep sadness that seemed to go beyond his current situation. "I'm sorry," she whispered, placing her small hand against the wall. "Not all humans are like this." The alien warrior studied her face for a long moment. Then, moving very slowly so as not to alarm the nearby guards, he raised one massive clawed hand and placed it against the wall opposite hers. For just a moment, human and alien stood connected by nothing more than a barrier and an understanding that transcended species. That evening, Yuri tried to convince other colonists about what she had witnessed. She spoke to neighbors, family, friends, anyone who would listen. But most people were too frightened and angry to hear her words. Her own parents were supportive but worried. "We believe you, daughter," her mother Yun-Su said gently. "But many people have lost loved ones to draconic attacks. Their grief makes them blind to possibilities beyond revenge. But if one of them can show mercy, maybe others can too," Yuri argued. "Maybe this war does not have to continue forever." Her father Junho looked out the window at the flashes of energy weapons in the night sky. "Perhaps. But right now, their fleet is trying to destroy us. Whatever compassion that creature showed you, his people are still our enemies." The siege was entering its final phase. The colony's shields were failing, and everyone knew it was only a matter of time before draconic ground forces breached the perimeter. Families huddled in their homes, preparing for the worst dot in the command center. Desperate plans were being discussed. Engineer So Young had made progress analyzing Vorthek's equipment, but she needed more information to unlock its secrets. "We could force the prisoner to cooperate," suggested Bong-Su once again. "Threaten it with execution if it does not help. The U.S. improve our defenses, and if it refuses?" asked Haijin. "Then we carry out the threat. At least we die knowing we tried everything." Captain Taemin objected strongly. "We gave our word that the prisoner would be treated honorably. Breaking that promise makes us no better than the enemies we fight." "Honor will not save our lives," Bong-Su replied coldly. "Sometimes survival requires difficult choices." The debate was interrupted by urgent reports from the perimeter guards. The draconic ground forces were massing for a final assault. Their preliminary attacks had identified weak points in the colony's defenses, and now they were preparing to exploit those vulnerabilities. As the emergency alarm sounded throughout New Bizan, families gathered their most precious possessions and prepared for evacuation to the emergency shelters. But everyone knew the shelters would only delay the inevitable. When the shields failed completely, there would be nowhere left to run. Yuri helped her parents pack medical supplies for the evacuation, but her thoughts kept returning to the alien prisoner sitting alone in his transparent cell. Vorthok had saved her life when he could have saved himself instead. Now he faced death alongside the humans he could have abandoned. It seemed terribly unfair that someone capable of such selfless action should die because of hatred between their peoples. But war rarely cared about individual acts of decency or compassion. Outside, the bombardment from orbit intensified as the Draconic fleet prepared to support their ground assault. The colony's defensive shields flickered more frequently, and power fluctuations caused lights to dim throughout the settlement. In his cell, Vorthok continued his patient vigil, watching the approaching end with the same calm dignity he had shown since his capture. He had accepted his fate, but Yuri had not. Somewhere in her young heart, a flame of defiance was growing stronger. She had seen proof that enemies could choose compassion over cruelty. If that was possible, then maybe other impossibilities could happen too. Maybe one girl's voice could make a difference. When the moment came to choose between justice and revenge, the final test was approaching, and with it would come a decision. That would define not just the fate of New Bizan colony, but the character of everyone who lived there. The final assault began at dawn on the 7th day of the siege. Draconic ground forces launched coordinated attacks against 3 different sections of the colony's perimeter, while orbital bombardment intensified to cover their advance. The shields that had protected New Bizan for a week finally began to fail completely. In the command center, Administrator Hyjin watched the tactical displays with growing despair. Red warning lights flashed across the control panels as defensive systems went offline one by one. The colony's fusion reactors were overloading from the constant drain of maintaining the shields. Estimated time until complete shield failure? She asked Engineer So Young. 2 hours, maybe 3 if we can reroute power from non-essential systems, came the grim reply. But sir, even if we shut down life support in half the buildings, we cannot maintain protection much longer. Captain Taemin coordinated the defensive response from his field post near the main gate. His soldiers were brave and well-trained, but they were vastly outnumbered. When the shields fell, conventional weapons would not be enough to stop the Draconic assault. All units, prepare for close combat, he radioed to his troops. Remember your training. Make every shot count. If we are going to die today, we die as soldiers defending our home. Throughout the colony, families huddled in emergency shelters or prepared to make final stands in their own homes. Some colonists wept openly, while others maintained grim determination. Everyone understood that these were likely their last hours alive, but in the central square, a different kind of drama was unfolding. As news spread that the colony's defenses were failing, many colonists began to gather around Vorthok's prison cell. Their fear and desperation was turning into murderous rage directed at the one enemy they could actually reach. Dong-Wu arrived, carrying a heavy mining tool that could serve as a weapon. Behind him came dozens of other colonists, many armed with whatever they could find. Their faces showed the same desperate fury that comes when death is certain but revenge is still possible. We are all going to die because of his people, Dong-Wu announced to the growing crowd. But we can at least make sure this monster dies first. We can send one alien back to hell before they send us there. Others took up the cry. Kill it now. Make it pay for what they did to our families. At least we get one victory before the end. Chang-Ho brought out a container of industrial solvent from the mining operation. We can burn it alive, the same way they burned my brother's family. Let it feel what our people felt. The mob surged toward the prison cell with murderous intent. Security guards were vastly outnumbered and stepped aside rather than fight their own neighbors. Within moments, dozens of angry colonists surrounded the transparent aluminum barrier that protected VORTHAK. Inside the cell. The alien warrior remained seated and motionless. He watched the approaching mob with calm yellow eyes, showing no fear or pleading for mercy. His dignity in the face of certain death was remarkable, but it only seemed to inflame the colonists' rage further. "Look at it," snarled Hay-One. "Still, acting superior even now? These creatures think they are better than humans. Time to show this one how wrong it is." Tools and makeshift weapons were raised as the crowd prepared to break through the prison walls. Some colonists brought cutting torches that could melt through the transparent aluminum in minutes. Others carried explosives. The moment of decision arrived with the sound of shattering energy shields. The colony's defensive barrier finally collapsed completely, sending ripples of blue light across the sky before fading into darkness. New Bizen lay exposed to its enemies, and everyone knew they had minutes rather than hours left to live. In the central square, the crowd around Vorthak's prison fell silent as the implications sank in. The debate about the alien prisoners' fate had become academic. Soon they would all be dead, human and alien alike. Administrator Hyjin stood at the edge of the crowd, her communication device crackling with desperate reports from the perimeter guards. Draconic ground forces were advancing rapidly now that the shields were down. Captain Tayman's voice came through the static, tense but professional. "All positions report enemy contact. They are moving in formation toward the main gate. Estimated time until they reach the colony center is 12 minutes. 12 minutes. That was all the time left for any of them. Hyjin looked at the massive alien warrior standing quietly in his transparent cell, then at young Yuri still positioned protectively in front of the prison. A crazy idea began to form in her mind, an impossible gamble that went against everything she had been taught about dealing with hostile aliens. "Release the prisoner," she announced suddenly. The crowd erupted in shocked voices. "What? Are you insane? It will kill us all." Even Security Chief Bong Su stared at her in disbelief. "Administrator, with respect, that creature is extremely dangerous. If we free it now, it could slaughter dozens of people before we bring it down." "We are all going to die anyway," Hyjin replied calmly. "But maybe, just maybe, there is another way. Yuri has shown us that this individual is capable of mercy. Perhaps he can show us a path beyond mutual destruction." Dongwu raised his mining tool threateningly. "I will not let you free that monster. It will kill us just like its people killed my family." "Then stop me," Hyjin challenged, pulling out her administrative override key for the prison controls. "But know that you may be destroying our last chance for survival." The crowd tensed as she approached the control panel. Some colonists moved to block her path, while others stepped aside. Yuri remained in position, her small body still shielding the prison cell. Before anyone could act, the sounds of weapons fire erupted from the colony's main gate. Energy blasts lit up the morning sky as Captain Tayman's forces engaged the advancing draconic ground troops. The battle for New Bizen had begun in earnest. Hyjin activated the prison release mechanism. The transparent aluminum walls began to lower with a soft humming sound, and within moments Vorthak stood free for the first time since his capture. The massive alien warrior looked around at the hostile crowd, many of whom still held weapons pointed at him. "I am free," he said in his careful human speech. "I could run now, or fight you, or wait for my people to rescue me. But I choose none of these things." He knelt down so that his yellow eyes were level with Yuri's. "Human child, you defended me when I could not defend myself. You showed courage when others showed only hatred. For this, I am in your debt." Rising to his full height, Vorthak addressed the entire crowd. "I am Vorthak Thanner, third claw of the hegemony, son of the warrior clan Draconis Rex. I have killed many humans in battle, and I do not ask forgiveness for doing my duty as a soldier. But I have also seen that your people are capable of honor and mercy even toward their enemies." The alien warrior paused as more weapons fire echoed from the perimeter. "Your defenders cannot hold my clan brothers for long. But perhaps there is another way to end this battle." I know the frequencies of our battle communications. I know the tactical codes. Most importantly, I know the warrior who commands this assault. The fleet commander is my clutch brother, Zorith Kaller. We were hatched from the same egg pod and trained together as warriors. If anyone among the hegemony would listen to words of peace, it would be him. Bong Su stepped forward, his weapon still trained on the alien. And why would you betray your own people to help us? Vorthak looked around the crowd, his gaze settling on Yuri, because this child showed me that enemies can become something more than enemies. Because I have seen humans choose mercy when they could choose cruelty. Because perhaps it is time for the killing to stop. The sounds of battle were growing closer. Captain Taemin's voice came through the communicators again, more urgent now. Outer defenses have fallen. Enemy forces are advancing through sectors 7 and 12. We need immediate reinforcement or evacuation of the civilian population. There is no time for evacuation, Hyjin said grimly. Can you really contact your fleet commander? I can try, Vorthak replied. But I will need access to a military communications array with enough power to reach the command ship in orbit. Engineer So Young pushed through the crowd. The emergency transmitter in the command center has that capability, but we would need to modify it to broadcast on alien frequencies. I can guide you through the modifications, Vorthak offered. But your people must decide quickly. My clan brothers will not waste time with mercy once they reach the civilian population. The crowd began to divide again. Some colonists wanted to trust the alien warrior's offer of help, while others insisted it was an elaborate trap. Dongwu remained the most vocal opponent. Do not listen to its lies, he shouted. These creatures are incapable of honor. It is trying to trick us into lowering our guard so its people can slaughter us more easily. But Yuri stepped forward again, her young voice cutting through the argument. He had the chance to let me die when he could have escaped. Instead, he chose to save me. If he wanted to betray us, he would not have put his chains back on and waited to be recaptured. Old Ji Hun nodded slowly. The child speaks wisdom. In war, sometimes the greatest victories come from the most unexpected alliances. Pilot. Jae-sung, who had witnessed Vorthak's selfless actions firsthand, also spoke in support. I have fought these aliens for years, and I have never seen one show mercy to a human before. If this one is different, maybe his people can be different too. The debate might have continued, but it was cut short by an explosion that shook the entire colony. One of the outer buildings had been destroyed by draconic energy weapons, and smoke was rising from the wreckage. We are out of time, Hyjin announced. I am making an executive decision. We will trust Vorthak's offer and attempt to contact the enemy commander. If this fails, we die. If we do nothing, we die anyway. Security Chief Bong Su reluctantly holstered his weapon. Against my better judgment, I will support this plan. But if the alien betrays us, I will personally ensure he does not live to regret it. The group hurried toward the command center, with Vorthak walking in the middle surrounded by armed guards. Some colonists followed to witness what might be humanity's last desperate gamble, while others returned to their homes to await whatever fate would bring Da as they moved through the colony's streets. Yuri walked beside the massive alien warrior. Despite everything that had happened, she felt no fear of him. She had seen his true character when they were trapped together in the darkness, and she knew he was nothing like the monster others believed him to be. Thank you, she said quietly. As they walked, for what, human child? For showing me that enemies do not have to stay enemies forever. For proving that there is still honor in this war even when everything else seems lost. Vorthak looked down at the brave young girl who had risked everything to defend him. You showed me the same truth. Perhaps that is how peace begins. Not with treaties between governments, but with individuals choosing to see beyond their hatred. Behind them, the sounds of battle continued to grow closer as draconic forces advanced through the colony's outer districts. But for the first time since the siege began, there was hope mixed with the fear. It was a fragile hope, dependent on the unlikely alliance between a human girl and an alien warrior. But it was real. In a few minutes they would learn whether compassion could triumph over centuries of mutual hatred. or whether New Bizen colony would become another casualty in an endless war between species. The outcome would depend not on weapons or tactics, but on the power of mercy to transform enemies into allies. The dragon had been unbound, but instead of bringing destruction, he carried the possibility of peace. It was the most human thing imaginable, the belief that even the most hopeless situations could be redeemed by choosing to trust rather than fear, to forgive rather than hate. The final test was about to begin.